episode of Adventures in Welding. I'm Paul, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to talk about Heli-Brazing or TIG brazing using silicon bronze rods. I've got a couple of coupons ready to go. You see how this is just some hot rolled 1/8 inch steel. There's the original side. You can see the coating on it. The side has been cleaned with a flat disc. Everything is nice and clean. The reason you might want to use silicon bronze in Heli-Braze as opposed to welding is just to limit your heat input in the metal. Now, if you were to stick to the 1 amp per thousandth rule of thumb, our 1/8 inch steel at 0.125 thousandths or 125 thousandths would call for 125 amps. Now, I'm never going to weld 1/8 inch steel at 125 amps, not TIG weld anyway. I would weld that somewhere around 85 amps or so. But by using silicon bronze, we can bring the heat down even less, perhaps somewhere around 75 amps. Now, since this is a brazing process and not a welding process, we're not going to be melting the parent metal. We're simply going to be melting the brazing material into. All right, since we're talking about TIG welding, our #1 rule of thumb is cleanliness. What I got here is 100% acetone. So we're just going to wipe our materials down with the acetone to get off any residual contaminants that may be on there, and also our rod. And finally, just going to give a nice wipe to the area where we're going to be welding. Let me get the machine set up and we'll move on. Alright, we're using the TIG 200 from our friends at Eastwood today. And since we're welding steel, this is a DC process. I'm going to control the amps on the foot pedal so we don't have to worry about the amperage control. The clearance effect, only useful for AC. I got my pre-flow set to a little less than 1/2 second. And I'm going to set my post-flow to about 5.5 seconds. I'm using a number 9 torch. This is also from Eastwood. It's available as an accessory if you get the TIG 200. And I'm using a stubby gas lens on here that I got from George's Plasma Cutter Shop. Using a 3/32 2% thoriated tungsten electrode. And you can see it's ground to a pretty decent tip. There's a little bit of flatness on the end, not much.
Let's start out this lamp joint here. I've got the maximum pedal amp set for about 70 amps, and that seems to be working pretty good. I've got a very tight arc, and I'm keeping the torch at about a 45-degree angle to the two plates. So I'm kind of pointing the torch towards where I'm going and directly into the crease. I'm heating up the metal, and then I'm adding the silicon bronze brazing material to the hot metal, which is melting it. I'm not melting the brazing material in the heat of the arc. That's a common mistake, and you want to avoid that. Now you can see I'm picking up speed as the metal is picking up heat, and I'm just going to reposition here. You just got to keep an eye on the puddle and watch as it grows, and it fills that gap from the bottom plate to the top edge of the top plate. And as it does, as soon as that puddle has spread its full distance, then you want to move along to your next spot, moving about a 1/16 of an inch or so, and adding the brazing material. Again, you can see here I'm picking up speed because the plate has been well preheated from the previous welding we've done here, or brazing, whatever you want to call it. I like to use the silicon bronze in a number of different situations. joining dissimilar metals is probably the best way to use it. But again, like I said, if you want to limit your heat input into metal, it also works out quite well for doing that. Now I'm coming up over my last tack here, so there's a little bit of ugliness right here we got to overcome. Now, just like with any TIG technique, as you get to the end of the plate and there's nowhere for the heat to go, start backing off your puddle and adding more rod.
Alright guys, there is our finished weld. You can see it has that nice coppery color. And what I really like about doing the Heli-Brazing is, since you're not actually melting the parent metals, you don't end up eating into that top edge of a lap joint too much. Less heat into your material, less stress into your material. Silicon bronze. Try it out with your TIG machine. You might just like it. That's it for today. Thanks for joining me. Check out our friends at Eastwood for all your welding needs. I'll see you next time on Adventures in Welding.